All right, let's get right into it. When you think of ancient Egypt, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably towering pyramids, right? Or those solid gold masks, and pharaohs who were basically living gods. It's this epic story of unbelievable grandeur. But here's the thing. For pretty much everyone who actually lived along the Nile, that just wasn't their story. So today, we're going to pull back that golden curtain and look at the gritty, challenging, and honestly, way more human reality of what daily life was actually like.
I mean, this is the image we all know and love. This is the Egypt you see in museums and big Hollywood blockbusters. A civilization that seems to be literally dripping in gold, totally obsessed with the afterlife and building these monuments that just defy time. It's a vision of perfection, of divine order and wealth we can barely even fathom.
But for the other 99% of the population, reality looked a whole lot more like this. You see, life wasn't lived in some sprawling palace. It was lived in simple, crowded, mud brick houses. And it wasn't some grand journey to the afterlife. Nope, it was a daily, non-stop struggle to survive against disease, disaster, and the government.
So that really gets us to the big question here. If you were just a regular person, a farmer, a craftsman, a soldier, living 3,000 years ago, what were the actual trials you faced? You know, from the second you woke up to the moment you finally got to sleep. Well, let's find out together.
First things first, we have to talk about the biggest relationship of all, the one they had with the natural world. In Egypt, you have to understand, nature wasn't just part of life, it was life. It was the source of everything good, but it was also this constant looming, unpredictable threat. And at the heart of all of it was this giant contradiction, the Nile River. On the one hand, its annual flood was this incredible gift from the gods. It would deposit this rich black silt that made farming in the middle of a desert even possible. But on the other hand, if that flood was too low, it meant starvation. And if it was too high, it would just wipe out entire homes and villages, causing total destruction. Every single year, their survival was a roll of the dice.
And hey, the Nile wasn't the only problem. You had the blistering, oppressive heat of the sun day in and day out. Sandstorms could literally block out the sky for days at a time. Oh, and the riverbanks, the marshes, not exactly a walk in the park. They were crawling with crocodiles, hippos, scorpions, venomous snakes. I mean, just going to get water for your family was a genuine daily risk.
Okay, so you've got nature basically trying to get you at every turn. But the challenges didn't stop there. The ones created by humans themselves, specifically the massive demands of the pharaoh's state, were just as tough to deal with.
For the huge majority of Egyptians, life was just labor. From the moment the sun came up till it went down, you were working. If you were a farmer, you were plowing and planting under that brutal sun. If you were a laborer, maybe you were cutting these gigantic stones out of a quarry or dragging them for miles to build a temple for a pharaoh you would never, ever meet. It was just physically relentless.
And taxes? Oh yeah, there was no escaping them. But this wasn't about money. You paid with your own sweat and with the food you grew. Scribes, these were the agents of the state. They'd show up at your farm, measure your fields, and calculate exactly how much of your grain or how many of your animals you owed. A huge chunk of everything you worked so hard for went straight to the state to feed priests and officials you'd probably never even see.
And the chances of moving up in the world? Almost zero. Egyptian society was a really steep, really rigid pyramid. At the very, very top, you had the pharaoh, this living god. Right below him, nobles and priests. And then way, way, way down at the bottom was pretty much everybody else, the farmers and the laborers. You were born into your station, and 99 times out of 100, that's where you died too.
So we've covered nature, we've covered the state, but now let's zoom in even further and get really personal. Let's talk about the daily battle just to stay healthy in a world that was, well, often pretty unhealthy.
35. Just let that sink in. That was the average life expectancy. Now, to be fair, that number is a little skewed because of how many children died very young, but it still highlights a brutal truth. Life was fragile. It was often shockingly short. A broken bone, an infected tooth, a parasite from the water, any of those things could easily become a death sentence. So what did they do? How did they fight back? Well, their medicine was this really fascinating and sometimes, let's be honest, bizarre mix of practical knowledge and pure magic. On one hand, they'd use honey on wounds. It's a natural antiseptic, so that actually works. But on the other hand, a common prescription for a headache? Rub a fried fish on it while you chanted a magical spell. I mean, they were throwing everything at the wall just to see what would stick.
And maybe the most profound sadness in Egyptian family life was just how dangerous it was to be a child. It's truly heartbreaking to think about, but historians estimate that maybe 1 in every 3 children didn't live to see their 5th birthday. Malnutrition and disease took an absolutely terrible toll, meaning almost every family knew that kind of loss firsthand.
And listen, even your own home wasn't a safe haven. There was no modern sanitation, so the water from the canals was a major source of parasites and disease. The homes themselves were constantly buzzing with flies, infested with rats, all of which carried even more illnesses. It was like a constant, invisible war being fought right where you lived.
Now, after hearing all of that, it would be really easy to just think of ancient Egyptian life as, well, miserable. But that would be missing the most important point. The real story here isn't about their suffering. It's about their incredible, unbelievable resilience in the face of all of it.
And we know this because they told us themselves. In what we call their wisdom literature, think of it like their self-help books, they wrote about endurance, about doing your work well no matter what. They found joy in their families, in festivals, in a simple mug of beer after a long day. They fell in love, they told jokes, and they built a civilization that lasted for 3,000 years. Not despite all these trials, but by enduring them.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The Egyptians battled floods and famines. We battle our own daily trials, right? Maybe they seem less dramatic, but they're the texture of our lives. So, what are the archaeologists of the future going to think when they dig up the evidence of our struggles? What story will our endless spam emails, our traffic jams, and our cryptic error messages tell them about our own endurance?